The Etiquette of Seeking Knowledge by Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd. Chapter 1. The Etiquette of the Seeker's Inner Self. Number 1. Knowledge is worship. The principle of all principles mentioned in this book, as well as the principle of every required action, is in your understanding that knowledge is worship. Some scholars said knowledge is a secretive prayer and the worship of the heart. Therefore, the condition of worship is, firstly, sincerity of intention for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, due to his saying, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ. And they were commanded not, but that they should worship Allah, and worship none but Him alone, abstaining from ascribing partners to Him. Surah Al-Bayyinah, Ayah 5. Also, we find in the famous hadith, which was narrated through only one chain upon the authority of the commander of the believers, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, actions are but by intentions. So if knowledge is devoid of sincere intention, then it is transformed from being amongst the most noble acts of worship to being one of the lowest forms of violation. And there is nothing that destroys the blessing of knowledge as much as riya, showing off, be it riya of shirk or riya of ikhlas, and also tasmi', showing off which intent of being heard of. An example of such is musmi', the person carrying out this action saying, I know such and such, or I have memorized such and such, etc. Therefore, adhere to freeing yourself from everything that blemishes your intention or seeking knowledge, such as love of standing out and rising above your colleagues, and turning them into objects of achieving hidden objectives in attaining worldly pleasures, such as seeking wealth, glory, fame, by the way of hearsay, praiseworthiness, or intending to turn people's faces in your direction. For these and other similar things are that such that if they blemish one's intention, they will corrupt it, and the blessing from knowledge will be lost. For this reason, it is incumbent upon you to protect your intention from all the traces of seeking with your knowledge the pleasure of others besides Allah and the Most High. Yet it is incumbent to beware of the things which lead to these evil qualities. There are a number of sayings and occurrences that I mentioned at the beginning of the first chapter of my book At-Ta'allum, and I would like to add the previous list, the prohibition of scholars on the issue of at-tubuliyat, the meaning, the controversial issues which are mentioned in order to achieve fame. It used to be said the drums are struck for the mistake of a scholar, and it was narrated that Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah said, I was blessed with the understanding of the Quran, and when I upturned the money purse such that the understanding, it was taken away from me. So hold fast. May Allah shower His mercy upon you to the most trustworthy handhold sincerity that will save you from these fatal blemishes by becoming, along with exerting yourself and becoming sincere, very faithful of anything that nullifies its sincerity, and displaying great poverty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, along with turning to Him sincerely. It was narrated that Sufyan ibn Sa'id al-Thawri said, I did not treat anything more difficult than my sincerity. It was narrated that Umar ibn al-Dar said to his father, O my father, why is it when you preach to people they are taken by their weeping, and when others preach to them they do not cry? So he replied, O my son, the bereaved woman who cries is not the same as the woman who is hired to cry over the dead. May Allah grant you prosperity in achieving the right guidance. Secondly, the comprehensive quality that guarantees the goodness of this world and the hereafter is the love of Allah, the Most High, and the love of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and realizing them by genuine following and pursuing the tracks of the infallible, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah the Most High said, قُلْ إِن كُنتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Say, if you really love Allah, then follow me, and in return, Allah will love you and forgive you your sins, and Allah is oft forgiving, the most merciful. Surah Ali Imran, Ayah 31. Generally, this principle is also considered as the basis of this book, and its position is that of crown to mere clothes. So, O you seekers of knowledge, here you are sitting cross-legged for the lesson, and your souls are attached to the most precious of things, seeking knowledge. So I advise myself and yourselves to fear Allah the Most High, openly and in secret, for indeed it is the tool, the landing place of all virtue, the level of praiseworthiness, the source of power, and the ascension of the highly aspirated and the most secure binding for the heart from the fitan, from the tribulations. So do not become negligent of it. Number 2, be adherent to the path of the Salafus Salih, the pious predecessors. Be Salafi upon the path of the Salafus Salih, from the Sahaba, companions radiallahu anhum, and those who followed after them, who pursued their tracks in all aspects of the religion, from the Tawheed to acts of worship and so forth. Be distinguished as strictly adhering to the tracks of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and implementing the Sunan upon yourselves, leaving argumentative or doubtful speech and not becoming engrossed in ilmul kalam, rhetorical speech, and all that attracts sins and diverts from the Sharia. Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah said it was declared authentic that Imam Daraqutni said, "There is nothing I despise more than ilmul kalam." I say al-Dhahabi that the man never ever became involved in ilmul kalam or argumentative speech, or ever became engrossed in ilmul kalam. Rather, he was a Salafi. Indeed, the people are Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the people of Sunnah and community, and those who pursue the tracks of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are just Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah described them. Ahlus Sunnah, the people of Sunnah, are the finest selection of Muslims, and they are the best people towards people, so adhere to the path. Allah said, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ, and follow not other paths, for they will separate you away from his path. Surah Al-An'am, Ayah 153. Number 3, commit to fearing Allah the Most High. Beautify yourselves by filling your outer and inner self with the fear of Allah the Most High, by observing the apparent characteristics of Islam and manifesting the Sunnah and spreading it by implementing it and calling towards it, leading the way to Allah with your knowledge, manners, actions, and adorning yourself with your masculinity, lenience, and pious conduct. The basis of all the previous characteristics is the fear of Allah the Most High, and for this Imam Ahmad rahimahullah said, the foundation of knowledge is fear of Allah the Most High. So adhere to fearing Allah openly and in secret, for the best of all people are those who are fearful of Allah, and no one truly fears Him except a knowledgeable person. Therefore, the best of all people is the scholar. Let it not slip your mind that the scholar cannot be considered a scholar unless he acts upon his knowledge, and no scholar implements this knowledge unless it earns him the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Khatib narrated through a chain of narrators which has a subtle point due to it being narrated through 9 forefathers, the Abdul Faraj, Abdul Wahhab, and Ibn Abdul Aziz, Ibn al-Harith, Ibn al-Asad, Ibn al-Layth, Ibn Sulaiman, Ibn al-Aswad, Ibn Sufyan, Ibn Zayd, Ibn Ukaynah, Ibn Abdullah at-Tamimi, who narrated from his memory that his father narrated, that his father narrated, that his father narrated, that his father narrated, and his father narrated, that his father narrated, who said, I heard Ali ibn Abi Talib say, knowledge calls for action. So either the call is answered or knowledge will take off. And it was also narrated that Sufyan al-Thawri said similar to this meaning. Number 4, continual observance of Allah. Adorn yourself with continual observance and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala openly and in secret, journeying to your Lord between the fear and hope, since they are for the Muslims like 2 wings to the bird. So advance to your Lord with your whole being, and let your heart be filled with the love of Him, and your tongue with His remembrance, and rejoice and be happy with His rulings and His wisdom subhanahu. Number 5, lower your wing and put arrogance and pride behind you. Adorn yourself with personal etiquette such as abstinence, forbearance, patience, humbleness to the truth, and tranquility. by displaying awe, self-possession, lowering one's wing, bearing the humility of learning for the glory of knowledge, and showing humility in the face of truth. Therefore, beware of all the evil qualities that oppose these qualities, since they are blameworthy. And if you do not, you are erecting against yourself a witness that there is a defect in your mind, and it is also a sign that you have been prevented from benefiting for your knowledge and from practicing it. So beware of haughtiness, for it is hypocrisy and pride. And the Salaf were very wary of it. Amongst the things that Imam al-Dhahabi narrated in biography of Amr ibn al-Aswad al-Ansi, who died in the Khilafah of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan rahimahullah, is that when he was leaving the masjid, he took his left hand with his right. So when he was asked about this, he replied, "Out of fear that my hand will shake, will make a gesture of hypocrisy." I say, Al-Dhahabi says, he held it out of fear that his hand would swing in a manner that indicates pride. For such an action is considered haughtiness, and this reaction from Al-Ansi rahimahullah happened unconsciously. Beware of the disease of the tyrant's pride, for indeed pride, greed, and jealousy are the first sins that Allah was disobeyed with. So your loftiness above your teacher is from pride. Arrogance towards someone who benefits you is from amongst those who are lesser than you in knowledge is pride. And your shortcomings is practicing your knowledge is the sludge of pride and a sign of deprivation from the blessings of knowledge and prosperity. Knowledge wars against the lofty youth, just as the flood attacks the high place. So adhere. May Allah shower His mercy upon you to sticking to the ground and pitying yourself and swallowing your pride and controlling it when it leans towards haughtiness or arrogance or the love of being noticed and other evil qualities associated with knowledge that destroy it. Take away its reverential quality, extinguish its light. So the more knowledge you gain or the higher you become in status, the stricter your adherence becomes to this, and by this you will achieve the greatest happiness and a platform that people will envy you for. Upon the authority of Abdullah ibn al-Imam al-Hujjah, the son of the authoritative Imam and the abundant narrator of the 6 books, Bakr ibn Abdullah al-Muzani rahimahullah said, I heard a person narrate from when my father was standing on Mount Arafah. He became soft-hearted and said, if I was not among them, one of the congregation, I would have said that they have been forgiven. The Dhahabi narrated it, then they said, and I say in this way, the slave of Allah should pity himself and swallow his pride. Number 6, contentment and zuhud, asceticism. Adorn yourself with contentment and asceticism. And the reality of zuhud is, zuhud is in the haram, unlawful, and to distance yourself from its boundaries by abstaining from the shubuhat, the matters of halal and haram that are unclear, and wishing for what is in people's possessions. It was narrated that Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah said, if a person sincerely advised the wisest people, he would encourage him to be amongst the ascetic people by becoming one of them. It was narrated that it was said to the Prophet, to Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani rahimahullah, that will you not write a book on zuhud? He replied, I have written a book on transactions, meaning the true ascetic person is the one who is cautious from falling into the shubuhat, matters of halal and haram that are unclear, and things which are disliked, whether in business or other transactions and professions. Therefore, the seeker of knowledge should be moderate in his lifestyle in a way that does not dishonor him, by maintaining himself and those who are dependent upon him, so he does not put himself in a position of humility and shame. Our Shaykh Muhammad al-Amin al-Shinqiti, who died in 1712-1393 Hijrah, rahimahullah, took very little from this worldly life, and I used to see him and he could not differentiate between the values of different notes with the same currency, and he once said to me, I came from my country, Shinqit, Mauritania, and with me is a treasure that is very seldom found in the possession of anyone, and it is contentment. If I wanted high status, I would have known the way to achieve it, but I chose not to exchange this worldly life for the hereafter, and I do not give my knowledge to attain worldly desires. Adorn yourself with the splendor of knowledge. Number 7, To adorn yourself with the splendor of knowledge is to have beautiful manners, pious conduct, such as continuous peacefulness, awe, humility, humbleness, adhesion to the clear path, by filling one's outer and inner self with these qualities and leaving all the characteristics that oppose them. It was narrated by Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah, said, they, the Salaf, used to learn manners as they would learn the knowledge. It was narrated by Raja ibn al-Haywah, rahimahullah, once said to a man, narrate hadith and do not narrate to me through a person who is lifeless or a slanderer. Narrated by Al-Khatib ibn al-Jami'. And then he commented further by saying, it is incumbent upon the seeker of hadith to refrain from play, idle fitting, and displaying vulgar manners in the gatherings by acting foolishly, giggling, laughing loudly, or excessive and continual joking. For indeed, joking is only permissible if it is in small amounts, and if it is occasional, subtle, and the type that does not exceed the boundaries of good manners and the way of knowledge. As for continual joking, and that which is vulgar and foolish, and that which arouses bitter feelings and attracts evil, then it is blameworthy. Excessive joking and laughing degrades your rank and your honor. There is a saying, whoever is excessive in something will be recognized by it, so avoid these flaws in your gatherings and in your speech. Amongst those who are ignorant, there are some of that think there is a relaxation in doing this excessively. It was narrated that Al-Ahna ibn Qais said, preserve your gatherings from the mention of women and food, for indeed I hate a man who describes his private parts and his stomach. In this judicial book of inspired speaker, the commander of believers, Umar ibn al-Khattab, said, and whoever adorns himself with other than that which he possesses, then Allah will disfigure him. Refer back to Ibn al-Qayyim's explanation. Number 8, adorn yourself with honor. Adorn yourself with honor and that which leads to it, such as a good manner, a cheerful face, spreading the salam, salutation, showing forbearance, hating haughtiness, having self-esteem which is free from tyranny, and being gallant but not for the sake of zealous partisanship, and being fanatic without being patriotic. Therefore, avoid the affairs that tarnish your honor, whether it be in your nature, in your speech, or in your actions, and also indulging in degrading actions or evil habits, such as being conceited, showing off, boastfulness, arrogance, and looking down upon others to be seen in doubtful places. Number 9, enjoy masculine qualities. Enjoy masculine qualities, which include bravery, forthrightness, noble manners, and giving form for the sake of good causes until the ambitions of men die before reaching your level. Equally, beware of the qualities that oppose them. These qualities, such as being unconfident, impatient, and weak in nobility, for indeed they destroy knowledge and cut off the tongue from speaking the truth, and they lead him headlong to his enemies in such a state where they, the opposing qualities, brush the faces of the pious among Allah's slaves with their poisons. Number 10, forsaking luxury. Do not become carried away in comfort and luxury, for asceticism is from Iman, faith, and take the advice of the commander of the believers, Umar ibn al-Khattab, in his famous book, and in it he says, so beware of excessive comfort and imitating the appearance of Ajam, the non-Arab, and toughen yourselves and roughen yourselves. Therefore, do not become inclined towards this false civilization, for it makes the nature effeminate, and it excessively relaxes the nerves, the person's enthusiasms, and ties you down with ropes of false hopes. While the serious people reach their destiny, you're still in your place, over-concerned about the elegance of your dress. Although many of these things are not considered muharram, unlawful, or makruh, disliked, they are not considered of good conduct. The outside appearance dress is also an indication of the person's affiliation. Rather, it defines him or her, and after all, is dress not one of many ways of expressing oneself? So be careful in what you wear, because it expresses to others your standing in what you are affiliated to, your upbringing and your taste, and it was due to this that it was said the outside appearance leads to one's inner inclination. Also, people initially categorize you according to your dress. Rather, the way in which you wear your clothes indicates to the onlooker as to how to categorize you in terms of dignity and sensibility, or shows you to be the sheikh, a person of worship, a childish person, or a person who loves to be noticed. So take from your dress that which adorns you and does not appear unattractive, and do not give anyone an excuse to talk about you or to criticize you. If what you wear and how you wear it meets with the nobility of what you carry in terms of religious knowledge, then it is more likely that you will be exalted in the eyes of the people and that your knowledge will be benefited from. Rather, in addition to this, it will become means of drawing nearer to Allah. Indeed, it is a means of guiding people to the truth. It was narrated that commander of the believers Umar ibn al-Khattab said, "It is more beloved to me to see the learned person in white garment, in order that he will be glorified in the hearts of the people, and in turn they will glorify that which he carries of the truth." People are, as Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah described to them, like the flocks of birds naturally disposed to imitating one another, so beware. Beware from dressing in a juvenile fashion. As for European dress, then the ruling of such does not escape you. However, this does not mean that you dress in an unattractive manner. You should shroud your outside appearance with pious conduct and good manners. The proofs for this can be found in Al-Jami' by Al-Khatib. These subtle points should not be dismissed, because even now the people of knowledge still point out such things in the books pertaining to softening the heart, the books of etiquette and the books of dress, and Allah knows best. Number 11. To avoid gatherings of vain speech. Do not stand on the carpet of those who carry out detestable acts at their places of gatherings and tear their veil of morality and pretending to be unaware of your actions. And if you do, then your crime against knowledge and its people is a grave one. Number 12. Avoid commotion, hayshat. Protect yourself from indulging in riotous and clamorous behavior, for indeed mistake lies behind clamor, and it opposes the etiquette of seeking knowledge. And for the subtle points that come to mind from what the author of Al-Wasit fi Udaba Shinqit from it is Mu'jam al-Ma'ajim, that the conflict took place between two tribes. So a third tribe came to arbitrate between them. They finally agreed to the religious ruling, and they betook a scholar as a judge who passed a judgment, and the 4 people should be killed from one of the tribes in return for the death of 4 people killed by the other tribe. So Shaykh Bab ibn Ahmad said, in such a situation the law of Islamic requital is not applicable. So the judge replied, such a decision is not to be found in any book. So the Shaykh said, rather, it is found in every book. So the judge said to him, this is the Qamus, the famous Arabic dictionary, meaning it comes under the category of book. So the Shaykh took Al-Qamus, and the first thing his sight fell upon was Al-Haysha. Riotous uproar is civil strife, and there is no requital in riotous uproar. When a person who is killed in civil strife and their killer is not known, and the people became astonished at his speed in summoning up such information in such a critical situation. Number 13. Adorn yourself with gentleness. Adhere to being gentle in speech, avoiding harsh words, for gentle speech wins over hostile personalities, and the proofs from the Quran and Sunnah on this topic are abundant. Number 14. Contemplation. Be contemplative, for whoever does so will reach their goal, and it was said, contemplate and you will reach. Therefore, think ahead of you when you speak. What am I going to say? What will be the results of what I'm going to say? Also, be careful of how you phrase what you are saying and convey what you want to say without going any extremes of fanciness. Carefully consider what words to use when you are thinking about how you are going to say, whether you intend to say Also, think carefully when you are asked a question, that you understand the question in its correct context in a way so as not to carry 2 meanings. Number 15. Firmness and confirmation. Adorn yourself with firmness and confirmation, and especially in calamities and serious situations. From it is patience and firmness upon acquiring and passing long hours in seeking knowledge from the scholars, for whosoever is firm will grow. Chapter 2. The Methodology of Seeking Knowledge. The methodology of seeking knowledge and its levels. Whoever does not perfect the foundation is prevented from reaching their aim in knowledge. and whoever wants to attain knowledge in one go will lose it in one go. It was also said, overcrowding the knowledge in the year misguides one's understanding. Therefore, it is essential to ground yourself in every subject you wish to study by perfecting its basics and perfecting a concise book on every subject with a shaykh and not relying upon personal efforts alone. Seeking knowledge should also be taken step by step. Allah the Most High said, وَقُرْآنًا فَرَقْنَاهُ لِتَقْرَأَهُ عَلَى النَّاسِ عَلَى مُكْثٍ وَنَزَّلْنَاهُ تَنزِيلًا. And it is a Qur'an which we have divided into parts in order that you may recite it to men at intervals, and we have revealed it by stages. Allah the Most High said, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ عَلَيْهِ الْقُرْآنُ جُمْلَةً وَاحِدَةً كَذَلِكَ لِنُثَبِّتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ وَرَتَّلْنَاهُ تَرْتِيلًا. And those who disbelieve say, why is the Qur'an not revealed to him all at once? Thus it is sent down in parts, that we may strengthen your heart thereby, and we have revealed it to you gradually. Allah the Most High said, الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يتلونه حق تلاوته أولئك يؤمنون به. And those who embraced Islam from Bani Israel or the companions to whom we gave the book, the Tawrat or the Quran, recite it and obey its orders and its teachings as it should be recited are those who believe therein. So in front of you, there are a number of things that you have to take into consideration in every subject you study. Number 1, memorize a concise book on it. Number 2, perfect it by studying it under a proficient shaykh. Number 3, do not engage yourself with long books and compilations of many different subjects before perfecting the basics and becoming proficient in it. Number 4, do not swap one concise book to another without any necessity. Number 5, capture the benefits and precepts of knowledge by writing them down. Number 6, mentally prepare yourself to seek knowledge and progress in it. Also be concerned with and zealous in attaining and reaching what is above you until you progress into long compilations with ease. It was the opinion of Ibn al-Arabi al-Maliki that the seeker should not mix between two subjects what he is studying, and that priority should be given to learning Arabic, poetry, and mathematics. Then go on to the Quran, but he was rebuked by Ibn Khaldun, who said that then present-day customs did not encourage this method. That was the priority should be given to studying the Quran and memorizing it, because as long as the child remains in the lap, he is easily controlled, but once he passes the age of adolescence, it becomes difficult to force him to do things. As for studying two subjects or more simultaneously, then this differs from one seeker to another depending upon their capacity of understanding and their enthusiasm. There were among the people of knowledge who taught Hanbali fiqh from Zadul Mustaqni' from the beginners, Al-Muqni' for differences of opinion within the madhab, and then Al-Mughni for differences of opinion at an advanced level, and did not permit the seekers in the first level to sit in the lessons of the seekers in the second level, and so on, so as to eliminate any confusion. And know that the list of the concise books and the long compilations upon which seeking knowledge is based and acquiring from the mashayikh generally differed from one region to another depending on the madhab and that which the scholars of that region were brought up on, since they will tend to be proficient in one particular concise book rather than any other. The situation is also differed from one seeker to another depending upon the talents, level of understanding, the strength and weakness of their will, and the rigidity or enthusiasm of their minds. As for the seeking of knowledge in our region, after the stage of Quranic schools and completion of the memorization of the Noble Quran, it passed through 3 stages with the mashayikh with regards to the lessons held in masajid and mosques. Number 1, the beginner. Number 2, the intermediates. Number 3, the advanced. As for Tawheed, they would be taught Al-Usul al-Thalatha wa Qawa'id al-Arba'a, then the Kashf al-Shubuhat, then Kitab al-Tawheed. All these 4 by Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab rahimahullah. This is on Tawheed Ibadah. Regarding Tawheed al-Asma' wa Sifat, the Tawheed of the names and attributes of Allah, Al-Aqidatul Wasitiyya, Al-Hamawiyya, Al-Tadmuriyya, all these three by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Then Al-Aqidah At-Tahawiyya along with its explanation. As for Arabic grammar, Al-Ajurumiyya, then Mulhat, Al-I'rab by Hariri, then Qatrun Nadar by Ibn Hisham, Al-Fiyya bin Malik, along with its explanation by Ibn Aqil. As for Hadith, Al-Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, then Umdatul Ahkam by Al-Maqdisi, then Bulughul Maram by Ibn Hajar, and Al-Muntaqa by Ibn al-Majid Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. And then they would delve into the 6 compilations of hadith: Al-Bukhari, Muslim, An-Nasa'i, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah, and others. As for the science of hadith, Nukhbatul Fikar by Ibn Hajar, then Alfiyatul Iraqi rahimahullah. As for fiqh, the etiquette of walking to the salah by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, then Zad al-Mustaqni' by al-Hajjawi rahimahullah, Umdatul Fiqh and Mughni for differences within the madhab, and Mughni for differences at an advanced level. All these 3 are by Ibn Qudama rahimahullah. And the principles of fiqh, al-Waraqat by Ibn Juwayni rahimahullah, then Rudatun Nazir by Ibn Qudama rahimahullah. As for the loss of inheritance, Al-Rahbiyya along with its explanation, and Fawa'idul Jaliyah. Tafsir Ibn Kathir rahimahullah. As for principles of tafsir, Al-Muqaddimah by Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. As for Sirah, the biography of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Mukhtasar al-Sirah al-Nabawiyya by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Za'ad al-Ma'ad by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. As for Arabic vocabulary, special attention would be given to classical Arabic poetry such as Al-Mu'laqat As-Saba', the reading of the Quran, and Fayruz Abadi rahimahullah, and so on, through the stages of knowledge on different subjects. And with this, they would study the long compilations such as the Tarikh by Ibn Jarir, history as narrated by him, and by Ibn Kathir also, and concentrate on the works of Ibn Taymiyyah and the seeker Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, and the books and the fatwas of the imams of the da'wah of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, especially the writings on Aqidah. In this manner, time would be engaged in some seeking knowledge. Within the gatherings of knowledge from after Fajr till forenoon, then after that there will be time for a nap just before Dhuhr, and lessons would be held after the 5 daily prayers. The seekers of knowledge and their mashayikh also used to be immensely well-mannered, have plenty of mutual respect along with self-esteem, and were upon the way of Salafus Salih. For this reason they reached their arms, and so many of them became recognized scholars, and all praise is due to Allah alone, the Lord of all the worlds. So it is not time to call for the return of the traditional methods of seeking knowledge by studying and memorizing concise, reliable books, and not just relying upon understanding alone or upon studying pre-prepared pamphlets. It is these 2 things that cause the seekers of knowledge to become lost and neither memorize nor understand the knowledge. It is Allah alone who we seek help from. It was narrated that Al-Hafidh Uthman ibn Khurrazad died in 282 AH rahimahullah said, the person associated to hadith is in need of 5 qualities, and if one of them is lost, then it is considered as a deficiency. He is in need of a good mind, piety, precision, proficiency in this field, as well as being well known for his trustworthiness. Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah commented, trustworthiness is a portion of the deen, piety, and precision is included in proficiency. So what a hafidh really needs is to be fearful of Allah, intelligent, grammatical, a linguist, righteous, modest, Salafi, and it is sufficient enough for him to write 200 volumes and to gather 500 reliable compilations of books. And not to become fatigued by seeking knowledge till death with sincerity and humility, otherwise let him not trouble himself. Number 17. To acquire knowledge from the mashayikh. The basis of acquiring knowledge should be by way of dictation and acquisition from the teachers, and by being in the continuous company of the scholars and taking from the mouths of men, and not from the scrolls and the depths of book. The first type of student is the seeker of knowledge who takes from the teacher, falls under the taking from one's relative when they talk. This is an example of one who takes from a teacher. The second takes from a book, which is inanimate. Therefore, how can the ties of lineage be possible? It also be used to said, whoever enters knowledge alone will emerge alone, such that whoever becomes involved in seeking knowledge without a sheikh will emerge without knowledge, because knowledge is a profession, and every profession has its experts. Therefore, it is necessary to have a proficient teacher in order to learn. There is almost a consensus from the scholars upon this, except for a very few who were isolated in their opinion that it is necessary to have a sheikh, such as Ali ibn Ridwan al-Misri al-Tabib, the doctor, died in 453 H, and he was refuted by the scholars of his age and those who came after them. Al-Dahabi said in his biography, and he did not have a sheikh. Rather, he engaged himself in taking from the books, and he wrote a book about acquiring a skill by reading from the books, and that is more prosperous from the learner, and this is wrong. And As-Safadi wrote extensive refutation of what he said, which was mentioned by Az-Zubaydi in his explanation of Al-Ihya, along with a number of other scholars, all putting forward a number of arguments. Amongst them, that which Ibn Batlan put forward in his refutation, in which he said, the sixth point, there are things that exist in the book that divert from knowledge, and they are non-existent in the teacher, and it is due to distortion that occurs due to the resemblance of the letters, in addition to the non-existence of the pronunciation and the mistakes that occur due to straying of the eyes, lack of experience, i'rab, implementing the rules of Arabic grammar, corruption of the existing book, handwriting that cannot be read, or reading that which is not written, not knowing the madhab of the author, poor quality of the scripts, poor transcription, lack of stopping at the correct punctuation, mixing up terminology of different subjects and using the terminology of one subject in context of another, and the existence of Greek myth terminology that the writer did not take from the Arabic language. All of the things mentioned obstruct knowledge, and the learner is relieved of them when he reads to the teacher. If the situation is such, then reading to the scholars is more advantageous and virtuous than personal study. This is what we wanted to explain, As-Safadi said. For this reason, the scholars said, do not take knowledge from a person who acquires it from the scripts, and do not take the Quran from a person who has recited the Quran from the Mus'haf, meaning, do not recite the Quran to a person who just read it from the Mus'haf without reciting it to a sheikh, or hadith, etc., from a person who acquired hadith by reading from the scripts. As for the tangible proof that establishes the falseness of Ibn Rudwan's theory, then it is that you will read thousands of biographies written in different eras throughout history that are full of mentions of the teachers and their seekers. Some seekers have many mashayikh, while others have few. Refer to some of the examples of those who have many teachers, to the extent that some of them had thousands, as mentioned in Al-Uzzab, taken from Al-Isfar by the author, Shaykh himself. Abu Hayyan Muhammad Yusuf al-Andalusi died in 745 after Hijrah, used to say, when Ibn Malik was mentioned to him, where are his teachers? And Al-Walid said, Al-Awza'i used to say, this knowledge used to be noble, passed down from men to men, but when it entered the books, the wrong people became involved in it. A similar account was narrated by Ibn al-Mubarak from Al-Awza'i. Without a doubt, flaws occur when taking from the scripts, even with their ijazah, especially at that time when there was no dotting or voweling, so that in turn the word could become distorted in a way that would change the meaning. Such flaws are non-existent when taking from the mouths of men. Errors also occur when narrating from memory, as opposed to narrating from an edited script. Ibn Khaldun researched this topic very well in his famous Muqaddimah, foreword. It was said by some in poetry, and whoever does not read the books to the scholars, then his certainty in difficult issues is conjecture. And Abu Hayyan used to frequently recite the following poetry. The gullible one wrongly assumes the book's guide, and the one understanding and attaining knowledge and it escapes the ignorant one that in it are obscure issues that confuse the mind of a person with understanding. If you wish to attain knowledge without a teacher, you will stray from the right path. The issues will become so confusing to you that you will become more astray than Tuma the wise. Chapter 3. The Etiquette of the Seeker with his Shaykh. Number 18. Considering the Shaykh's consequent status. Since knowledge is not attained initially from the books, rather it is necessary to take from Shaykh in order to perfect the keys of knowledge with him, so as to prevent yourself from tripping and slipping, and then it is incumbent upon you to take into consideration the Shaykh's consequent status, for indeed it is the token of success, acquisition, and prosperity. So make your Shaykh an object of your reverence, honor, appreciation, and courtesy. Therefore, take from the comprehensive aspects of etiquette when sitting with your shaykh, or speaking to him, or asking him questions and listening attentively to his answers. Also, display good etiquette with any book when turning its pages in his presence. Abstain from arguing with the intent of showing off in front of him. Do not precede him in speech or in your steps, or talk excessively in his presence, and do not continually interrupt him while he is speaking or during his lecture. Do not continually pester him for an answer to your question, and avoid extensive questioning, especially in the presence of an audience, for indeed this attracts self-delusion on your behalf and causes the shaykh to become bored. Avoid calling him by his first name or by his surname, as one would say, "Oh, Shaykh so-and-so." Rather, you should say, "Ya Shaykhi, oh my Shaykh, Ya Shaykhana, oh our Shaykh," and do not call him by name. That is more elevated in manner. Also, avoid addressing him with the term address ant, you, or calling him from a distance without necessity. Consider the etiquette that Allah mentioned with the one who taught the mankind all good, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his saying, لا تجعلوا دعاء الرسول بينكم كدعاء بعضكم بعضا. Make not the calling of the messenger among you as the call of one of you to another. That is Surah An-Nur 24:63. Similarly, just as it is not befitting to call your biological father by saying, "Oh, so-and-so," or "Oh, my father so-and-so," and mention his name, then it is not befitting with your shaykh. So adhere to preserving the awe of the gathering and displaying rejoice and benefit derived from the lessons. If a mistake from the shaykh becomes apparent to you, or a delusion on his behalf, then let that not degrade the shaykh in your eyes, for such would be the cause of you becoming deprived from his knowledge, and who is safe from falling into mistakes. So be careful not to interact with him in a way that irritates him, and from this is what the muwallidun call the battle of nerves, which means to test the capacity of the shaykh's knowledge and patience. If, however, you decide to change to another shaykh, then seek his permission, for this is more befitting to his consequent status, and more likely to the preserved love and compassion in his heart for you, and so on. Through the list of etiquette that is shown by the heart to every blessed and prosperous person out of fulfillment of the shaykh's rights through his religious fatherhood, or what is referred to in some laws as cultural suckling, and referred to it as religious fatherhood, is more befitting, and leaving the other one is more appropriate. Know that your success is dependent upon how much you take his status into consideration, and barely considering it as a sign of your failure. Caution: I ask Allah to grant you refuge from the doings of the A'jim, and the followers of Sufi orders and the present-day innovators. From total submission to the mashayikh that exceeds the boundaries of Shari'ah, from licking the hands and kissing the shoulders and grabbing the right hand with both right and left hands when giving salam, behavior that resembles adults when they show off affection to children, and bowing at the same greeting, and using slack phrases that indicate lowliness such as Sayyidi, Mawla, O Master, and other such statements used by servants and slaves. Refer to what the Al-A'lamatu Salafi al-Shaykh Muhammad al-Bashir al-Ibrahim al-Jazairi rahimahullah said in his book Al-Busa'ir, for indeed it is exceeding in its content. Number 19. Your capital, O seeker, is from your shaykh. Follow his pious manners and noble character. As for acquisition and dictation of knowledge, then that is extra profit. However, do not be taken by an exuberant love of your shaykh, lest you fall into abomination without realizing that all those around you realize. And do not imitate him in his voice, tone, walk, movements, or appearance, for he did not become a great shaykh just by this. So do not fall by following him in this. Number 20. The shaykh's enthusiasm in his lessons. This is dependent upon the seeker's capacity to listen, frame of mind, and how much he becomes emotionally involved with this shaykh in his lesson. For this reason, beware of becoming a tool for cutting off his knowledge by being lazy, slack, or slouching and allowing the mind to wander during his lessons. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah said the right of benefit should go to its zealous wanter and not presented except to the person interested in it. So if the muhaddith sees slackness from the listener, then let him become silent. For some of the people of culture said, the enthusiasm of the speaker depends upon the capacity of the listener. He then narrated through his chain of narrators to Zayd ibn Wahab that he said, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, narrated to the audience as long as they glance at you with their eyes, and if you see slackness from them, then halt. Number 21. Writing what the shaykh says during the lesson or revision. Understand that this differs from one shaykh to another, and it has etiquette and a condition. As for the etiquette, you should notify your shaykh that you are going to write or that you have written revisions form. As for the condition, you should indicate that you wrote it from listening to what he said in his lesson. Number 22. Acquiring knowledge from the mubtadi', an innovator. Beware of the mubtadi', Abu Jahl, the one who has been touched by deviancy in his creed and engulfed by the clouds of fiction, he who allows himself to be ruled by his vain desires and calls it logic and diverts from the text of the Quran and Sunnah. After all, where is logic to be found except in the text of the Quran and Sunnah? He also holds fast to weak hadiths and distances himself from the authentic hadiths. They are also referred to as Ahlus Shubuhat, dubious people, and Ahlul Ahwa, the people who follow their vain desires in the religion. And for this reason, Ibn al-Mubarak rahimahullah used to call them al-Asagir, the small ones. Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah said, if you see the innovative mutakallim saying, leave out the Quran and Sunnah and bring forth logic, then know that he is Abu Jahl. And if you see the one on the spiritual path who claims that by practicing a set of prescribed forms of innovated worship, he will attain oneness with Allah, the Sufis, saying, leave us from knowledge that is transmitted, the Quran and Sunnah, and bring forth taste and ecstasy of passion, then know that he is Iblis, Shaitan, become manifest in human form, or has become incarnate within him. So if you become cowardly, then run away from him, otherwise wrestle him down and sit on his chest with your knee and read Ayatul Kursi and strangle him. He also said, rahimahullah, and I read in the handwriting of a Shaykh Muwaffaq is saying, we heard his lesson, such as Ibn Abi Asrun, with my brother, Abi Umar, then we stopped going to his lessons. I heard my brother say, I entered his house after that, and he asked, why have you cut yourselves off from me? So I replied, some people say that you are Ash'ari. So he said, by Allah, I am not an Ash'ari. This is a rough meaning of the story. It was narrated that Malik rahimahullah said, knowledge hadith is not taken from four: a foolish person who publicizes his foolishness, even if he was the most prolific narrator of hadith; a person of bid'ah who calls to it; a person who lies in his speech with people, even if I don't accuse him of lying in hadith; and a noble pious worshipper if he does not memorize precisely what he narrates. O you seeker of knowledge, if you are in a position of freedom of choice, then do not take from a mubtadi', be he a rafidi, a khariji, a murji, a qadari, a quburi, or etc. For you will never reach the level of knowledgeable men, correct in your creed, strong in your association with Allah, with strong vision and following the tracks, except by abandoning the mubtadi'ah and their innovations. The books of biographies and holding fast to the sunnah are abundant with accounts of Ahlus Sunnah finishing off the mubtadi'ah and renouncing their innovation and distancing away from them as a sound person would distance himself from a sick, deceased person. There are so many stories and accounts that would take a long long time to recount, but it gives me pleasure to mention a few of them, for the Salaf used to seek reward with Allah in disregarding them and humiliating them and rejecting the Mubtadi' and his innovation. They also used to warn against becoming associated with them or seeking their opinion or eating with them, for the Mubtadi' and Sunni should be so far apart that each of them cannot see the fire of other. There were amongst the Salaf those who never used to pray among the funeral of the Mubtadi' and would be seen leaving the funeral ceremony. It was also witnessed that Al-Allama Al-Shaykh Muhammad ibn Ibrahim abstained from funeral over a Mubtadi'. Also, there were among the Salaf those who used to prohibit from praying behind them or mentioning their innovations, because the heart is weak and doubtful affairs are swift in abductions of hearts. Sahal ibn Abdullah at-Tustari used to hold the opinion that it is not permissible for a mubtadi' to eat flesh of an animal that died without being slaughtered according to Islamic Sharia, in case of a dire necessity because he is a transgressor due to Allah saying, فَمَنِ الضُّرُّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ. But if one is forced by necessity without willful obedience, nor transgressing due limits. Surah Al-Baqarah 173. And he is a transgressor with his bid'ah. They also used to banish them from their gatherings, as in the story of Imam Malik with the one who asked him about the way in which Allah established himself upon the throne, in which, after he made his renowned statement, "And I suspect you of being associated with bid'ah," he ordered for him to be banished. There are numerous accounts of the Salaf turning away from the Mubtadi'ah and abandoning them out of fear of their evil, and in order to control the spread of their bid'ah and to dishearten them from spreading it, since the association of a Sunni with a Mubtadi' is a testimony from his credibility, and for the beginner and the Ammi commoner. The Ammi is derived from Amma, blindness, and on most common occasions he is in the hands of those who guide him. Similar events can also be found in the books written on the science of hadith, the etiquette of seeking knowledge, the declaring the narrator as being reliable or unreliable. O you seeker, be Salafi, adhering to the path, and beware of the Mubtadi'ah lest they divert you, for they employ many ways to target and deceive people and fabricate a paved way to it by using honeyed speech, and in fact it is honey, read in Arabic left to right. The downpour of tears, elegant dress, deceiving people with their imagination, astonishing people with their miracles, and licking the hands and kissing of the shoulders, etc. There is nothing more behind all this than the craving for bid'ah and the dust of tribulation that he plants within your hearts. And he uses you in his company, and by Allah, the blind person at heart is not suited to lead the blind and guide them. As for taking from the scholars of the Sunnah the lick of the honey without asking, take knowledge from them without worrying. And may Allah guide you to prosperity, so that you may drink from the prophetic inheritance in its pure state. Otherwise, let he who wishes to cry over the religion. What I have mentioned to you is when you have freedom and choice. If, however, you are studying academically and you have no choice in whom you can take from, then be wary of him and seek refuge in Allah from his evil, and be alert to any infiltration, since the saying goes, pick the fruit and throw the wood in the fire, and do not become fatigued by seeking knowledge, for I fear that it'll be considered as turning one's back and fleeing from the battlefield at the time of fighting. In this situation, you are only obliged to know his case, avoid his evil, and unveil him. One example is when Abu Abdir Rahman al-Muqri narrated from a murji'. It was said to him, "Why do you narrate from a murji'?" So he replied, "I trade the meat for the bones." Al-Muqri narrated from him without deceit or anonymity, because he made it clear by saying when he narrated from him and he was a murji'. And what I wrote for you here is from the principles of your creed, the creed of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, as was written by Shaykh al-Islam Abi Uthman Ismail ibn Abdul Rahman al-Sabuni in his Salafi Aqidah. He said, "And they hate Ahlul Bid'ah, and those who innovated into the religion what is not of it, and they do not love them, or befriend them, or listen to their speech, or sit with them, or argue with them in the affairs of religion, nor do they debate them. And they protect their ears from their falsehood, because if it were to pass through the ears and reside in the heart, it would be harmful and would lead to evil whisperings and thoughts." And on this, Allah revealed his statement, وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَ الَّذِينَ الذين يخوضون في آياتنا فأعرض عنهم حتى يخوضوا في حديث غيره. And when you see those who engage in a false conversation about our verses by mocking at them, then stay away from them till they turn to another topic. Surah Al-An'am 68. It was narrated from Sulaiman ibn Yasar that a man by the name of Subayg arrived at Medina and began to ask about the mutashabbih, the unclear verses of the Quran. So Umar sent for him, and he had prepared the date palm branches for him where he arrived. When he arrived, Umar said to him, "Who are you?" He replied, "I am Subayg, the slave of Allah." So Umar took one of his branches and struck him with it until his head bled. Then he left him till his head healed, and resumed striking him again and allowing him to become healed. Then he called for him to strike him again. So Subayg said, "If you wish to kill me, then kill me in a beautiful manner." So he gave him permission to go back to Salan and wrote to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari in Yemen, "None of the Muslims are allowed to sit with him." Narrated by Ad-Darimi. It was also said that he was accused of holding the belief of Khawarij. An-Nawawi said in his book Al-Adhkar, the chapter of declaring innocence from the people of bid'ah and sin, and he mentioned the hadith of Abu Musa that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared himself innocent of the woman who wails loudly when calamity befalls her, and the woman who shaves her hair when calamity befalls her, and the woman who tears her clothes when calamity befalls her, agreed upon. There is also a narration when Ibn Umar declared his innocence of Al-Qadariyya, narrated by a Muslim. However, the issue of abandoning the mubtadi is based upon considering the benefits and increasing them and deterring evil and decreasing it, and the permissibility of abandoning the mubtadi is based upon this principle, as Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah clarified in many of his books. The mubtadi'ah only increase in numbers and emerge if knowledge becomes scarce and ignorance becomes widespread. And it is about them that the Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said, for it is this category that increases and emerges if ignorance and its people increase, and where there are no people who possess knowledge of prophethood and the following of it, who makes its light apparent, the light which erases the darkness of misguidance and exposes all that which opposes it, including lies, association of false partners with Allah, and contradiction. So if you become strong in knowledge, then subdue the mubtadi' and his bid'ah with an authoritative and eloquent tongue, and peace be with you. Chapter 4. The Etiquette of Companionship. Beware of a bad companion. Number 23. Just as hereditary disposition is hidden, bad characteristics are also hidden, because character is transferable and the first impressions are major abductors of hearts, and people are like the flocks of birds naturally disposed to imitating one another. So beware of associating with whoever is to his liking, for it is indeed destruction, and prevention is better than cure. Therefore, choose the best for companionship and friendship, someone who will help you in your quest and drawing nearer to your Lord and agrees with you in your noble objective and intention. Take from me the most precise gauge in categorizing friends. Number 1, a friend who befriends you solely for his welfare. Number 2, a friend who befriends you solely for fun. And number 3, a friend who befriends you for virtue. As regards to the first two categories of friends, then their relationship with you is cut off when the necessitating reason for which they befriended you is fulfilled. The attainment of welfare in the first and the fun in the second. As for the third category, then this is the one we will concentrate on. He is the one who is driven into a friendship due to mutual belief in the firm establishment of virtue in both people. A companion of virtue today is hard currency and very difficult to find. Amongst the beautiful sayings of Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, died in 125 AH, is this saying, "Nothing remains of the worldly pleasures except a brother with whom I raise the burden of taking precaution between me and him." Amongst the subtle statements that should be noted are some of that saying, al-uzza, meaning isolation without the letter ayn, from the word al-ilm, meaning knowledge in Arabic, becomes the Arabic language zalla, a mistake. And without the letter zay, from the word az-zuhud, asceticism, becomes in Arabic language illa, meaning defect. Chapter 5. The Etiquette of the Student in Leading a Life of Knowledge. Number 24. High aspirations of knowledge. Adorning oneself with high aspirations is one of the characteristics of Islam, and aspirations are of the base for negativity and positivity within your personality, and is a supervisor over your actions. Having high aspirations will attract endless good from Allah that is never cut off, so that you may rise through the levels of perfection, and the blood of endurance will flow in your veins, and you will run in the fields of learning and acting upon what you have learnt, so that people will only see you standing at the doors of virtue and not outstretching your hand except to important affairs. It also eliminates trivial hopes and actions, and it uproots within your heart the tree of humiliation, degradation, adulation, excessive groveling, and compromise on behalf of the religion. So the person with great aspirations is composed and not terrorized in dire situations. As for the person who has lost it, then he is a fearful coward whose mouth is shut by his impotence. So do not confuse high aspiration with pride, because the difference between them is like the difference between the heavens that give rain again and again and the earth which splits with the growth of trees and plants. High aspirations is the adornment of inheritors of prophets, and the pride is the sickness of those who are sick with the sickness of the wretched tyrants. O seeker of knowledge, prescribe for yourself high aspiration and do not let it escape you. The religion is pointed towards it, religious issues that are connected to your everyday life, so you may always be alert and taking advantage of it. For example, the permissibility for the religiously advantage of it. Example, the permissibility for the religiously obliged person to purify himself with dust if he does not have water at his disposal, and not forcing him to buy water in order to use it for ablution. And this is a blessing which is surely attained from the high aspiration. And with this measure all other examples, and Allah knows best. Number 25. The burning desire for seeking knowledge. Once you have understood the statement attributed to the rightly guided Khalifa Ali ibn Abi Talib, the worth of every person is that which he is good at. As if it was said, there is no statement more pressing for the seeker of knowledge than it. Then beware of the mistake of the one who says, the predecessor has left nothing for the one who comes after him, and it should be corrected too. Much has the predecessors left for the one who came after him. Therefore, extensively increase in attaining from the inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ and accelerate in your efforts to attainment and close examination of the issues of knowledge. And no matter where you reach in knowledge, always remember, much has the predecessor left for the one who came after him. From the biography of Ahmad ibn Abdul Jalil from Tarikh Baghdad by Al-Khatib is a highlight of one of his poems. The noble person is unlike the lowly person, no, nor intelligent one like the stupid one. The value of the person in everything he is good at, a judgment passed by Imam Ali. Number 26. Emigrating for the sake of seeking knowledge. Whoever is not strong enough to travel will never be traveled to by the seekers of knowledge. So whosoever does not emigrate to seek knowledge in search of teachers and travel to acquire from them, then it is very unlikely that he will become qualified enough to be traveled to, because these scholars who pass their time in learning and teaching and being acquired from possess knowledge attained through research, precision, subtle points of knowledge, and experiences that are very rarely found in the depths of books. Beware of desisting from this, emigrating as the idle members of the Sufi community do, those who prefer the knowledge of rags over the knowledge of paper. It was once said to them, "Will you not travel to listen from Abdul Razak?" So he replied, "What do I want with listening from Abdul Razak when I can listen to the Creator?" And another said in poetry, "And if they quote me from the knowledge of paper, I will excel them with the knowledge of rags." So beware of these people, for they did not give triumph to Islam, nor did they defeat Kufr. On the contrary, they were amongst them those who were a burden and a tribulation to Islam. Number 27. Preserving knowledge through writing it. Do your utmost to preserve the knowledge in written form, because binding knowledge by way of writing is a safeguard from losing it, and a shortcut in time it takes to search for it when it is needed. especially regarding issues that are not to be found in their likely locations. Perhaps its greatest benefit is when you become old-aged and weak. You will have at your disposal material from which to draw other material without any toil in searching and without having to carry out thorough research. For this reason, set aside a scrapbook or notebook for yourself where you can write the precious benefits in random topics that are found in their likely locations. And if you use the cover of your notebook to index the content, then that is fine. Then you would transfer what you have gathered into a different notebook, organize it according to subject, and write the heading of each issue and the name of the book and the page and volume number. Then write above what you have written in rough transferred, so that as to not confuse it with that which has not been transferred, just as you might write reached page such and such and that which you have read from book, so as not to miss out what you haven't read. There are a number of works written by scholars in this manner, such as Bada'i al-Fawaid by Ibn al-Qayyim, Khabaya al-Zawaya by al-Zarkashi, and al-Ighfal and al-Baqayatul Khabaya, and many others. Therefore, bind the knowledge with writing, especially unique benefits that are not found in their likely locations, and things that are hidden in corners which are out of context, scattered pearls which you see and hear that you fear will pass you by, so and so on. And also because the memory will weaken and forgetfulness is frequent. As Sha'bi said, if you hear anything, write it, even in a wall. Narrated by Khaythama. If that which Allah willed to grant you from knowledge is gathered before you, then organize it in a notebook or scrapbook according to subject, for it will come to your aid in times of constraint in which every reliable person will be helpless in achieving anything. Number 28, preservation of knowledge through paying attention to it. Do your utmost to preserve the knowledge by implementing it and following it. Al-Khatib said, it is incumbent upon the seeker of knowledge to purify his intention in seeking knowledge, and it should be achieving the pleasure of Allah. He should beware of making it a way to achieve materialistic gain and a way of gaining worldly compensation, for the penalty of such has been set aside for the one who seeks with his knowledge. He should beware of boasting or showing off with it, and making his intention in seeking hadith for the sake of leadership and to gain following, or to summon gatherings where hadiths are narrated, for these were the flaws of some scholars fell into. He should preserve hadith by paying attention to it, and not just by narrating it, for the verbal narrators of knowledge are many, and those who preserve it by action are few. And many a time a person who is present physically or absent mentally is as good as an absent person, and a knowledgeable person is as good as an ignorant person, and a carrier of hadith who has nothing of it in his possession due to his rejection of its rulings is on the same level as one who does not know it or rejects learning it. The seeker of hadith should also be distinguished in his general affairs from the common people by implementing the narrations of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ as much as he can, and implementing the traditions upon himself. For verily, Allah said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, you have a good example. Number 29, occasional revision of knowledge. Occasionally revise your knowledge from time to time, because lack of revision is a sign of forgetting knowledge under any circumstances. Abdullah ibn Umar narrated that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, the example of the carrier of Quran is like no other than the owner of a camel whose camel's feet are bound by a cord. If he guards over it, he will keep it under control, but if he releases it, he will run away. Al-Hafidh ibn Abdul Barr said, in this hadith is a proof that whosoever does not revise his knowledge will lose it, and whoever he may be, because of their knowledge at that time was the Quran and nothing else. And if the Quran, which has been made easy to remember, is lost without revision, then what about other types of knowledge? And the best type of knowledge is that which its foundation is perfected and its branches are memorized, and that which leads to Allah, and that which pleases him. It was said by some scholars, every glory not emphasized by knowledge, then humiliation is its destiny. Number 30, to gain understanding of Islam by deriving the issues of fiqh, Islamic rulings, by applying the comprehensive principles of the Sharia. Behind knowledge of the religion is gaining understanding, and its learner is the one who ties the rulings in with established concepts of the Sharia. In the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, we find that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, "May Allah illuminate the face of the person who hears my saying and memorizes it, understands it, and conveys it as if he has heard it." And many a time a person is a carrier of knowledge, but he is not a person with a religious understanding. And many a time a carrier of knowledge carries it to someone who has more religious understanding than him. Ibn Khair commented in his explanation of this hadith, and it's an indication that fiqh is an extrapolation and comprehending the meanings of the text, and it explicitly illustrates the obligation of learning jurisprudence. And searching for the meanings of the hadith and deriving its hidden secrets. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and his student Ibn al-Qayyim have had a major impact in this field. Whoever reads from the books of these two Imams will be led to the straight path of learning. And amongst the fine extracts of Shaykh al-Islam's saying is what he said in a gathering of learning to proceed. Indeed, we were in a gathering of learning and reflecting upon the comprehensive rulings of Sharia by portraying, establishing, founding, elaborating on these rulings. So the topic changed too, and he mentioned an issue. So I say, there is no strength or might save through Allah. This issue is based upon a principle and two-side issues. And know, may Allah guide you, that before learning is contemplation. For indeed Allah created His slaves in many verses of His book to move by wandering with deep vision into deep contemplation upon the dominions of the heavens and earth and close examination of themselves and their surroundings. Doing this opens the door of intellectual power to the wildest, strengthens the faith, deepens the understanding of the rulings, and leads to achievement of knowledge. كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تعقلون. Thus Allah makes clear His ayat, laws, to you in order that you may understand. In another verse, Allah also said, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الْأَعْمَى وَالْبَصِيرُ أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Say, are the blind and the one who sees equal? Will you then not take thought? Therefore, gaining understanding is better in the long run than contemplation, because gaining understanding is the fruit and product of contemplation. Allah also said in Surah An-Nisa, verse 78, فَمَا لِهَؤُلَاءِ الْقَوْمِ لَا يَكَادُونَ يَفْقَهُونَ حَدِيثًا. What is wrong with these people that they fail to understand any speech? But gaining understanding is protected by proof, secluded from greed and desire. Allah Azza wa Jal said in Surah Al-Baqarah verse 120, وَلَئِنِ اتَّبَعْتَ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ بَعْدَ الَّذِي جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ مَا لَكَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ وَلِيٍّ وَلَا نَصِيرٍ. And if you were to follow their desires after what you have received of knowledge, then you would have against Allah neither any protector nor any helper. So, O seeker of knowledge, adorn yourself with vision and contemplation and understanding and the gaining of understanding. Perhaps you will fast. Perhaps you will pass the stage of being a tourist to the stage of being faqih in-nafs, a person with psychological understanding, as the jurists say. He is one who ties the rulings to the established concepts of Sharia, and in the terminology of the muhaddithin, he is referred to as faqih al-badan. So clear your vision when faced with a new issue by deriving the issues of fiqh, Islamic rulings, by applying the comprehensive principles of the Sharia and paying complete attention to the principles and regulation of knowledge. When examining an issue, you should combine between following it up through research and examining and applying a general fundamentals of Sharia and its established principles, such as principles of collective interest, deterring harm and real hardship, and drawing religious ease to the religiosity obliged person, closing the door of artifices tricks used to escape religious obligations or to get around the prohibited affairs of the religion, and blocking the means to evil. In this manner, you will always be directed towards guidance in your affairs, and it will also come to your aid in difficult situations. So adhere to gaining understanding, as I previously mentioned, in the religious text and gaining insight into which surrounds the circumstances of religious legislation and contemplating upon the overall aims of the Sharia. If your understanding is free of this, your healing is distant from hearing it, then you are wasting your time, and indeed the name of ignorance has fallen upon you. It is this characteristic in particular that gives you precise distinction and the correct gauge as to extent of your acquisition of knowledge and the ability to derive rulings. Hence, the jurist is the one who, when faced by a case for which there is no text, he adapts a ruling for it. In just the same way, a person associated to the art of composition in the Arabic language is not one who can give you the categories of the knowledge, then its branches. Rather, he is the one whose insight into eloquence penetrates the book of Allah, so he extracts from its hidden knowledge many angles, and if he writes or gives sermons, he will organize it like the beads of necklace, and and likewise in all subjects. Number 31. Seeking refuge in Allah when seeking knowledge and acquiring it. Don't panic if the subject becomes inaccessible due to its difficulty. For some subjects were impenetrable to some of the renowned scholars, and some of them openly admitted to it, as is evident from their biographies. Amongst them were Al-Asma'i in the science of prosody, Al-Muhaddith al-Ruhawi in the art of calligraphy, Ibn al-Salah in the science of logic, Abu Muslim al-Nahwi in the science of morphology, As-Suyuti in mathematics, and Abu Ubaidah Muhammad ibn Abdul Baqi' al-Ansari, Abu al-Hasan al-Qati'i, Abu Zakaria Yahya ibn Ziyad al-Farra', and Abu Hamid al-Ghazali in Arabic grammar. O seeker of knowledge, increase your zeal and flee to Allah in supplication, seek refuge in Him, and break down before Him in humility. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah used to say frequently in his supplication, if the meaning of a verse from the Book of Allah became impenetrable, O teacher of Adam and Ibrahim, teach me, and O you who made Sulaiman understand, make me understand, and access to it would be granted for him. Number 32. Honesty in knowledge. It is incumbent upon the seeker of knowledge to be preeminent in adorning himself with honesty in knowledge, when seeking and acquiring it, implementing it, conveying it, and passing it on. For indeed, success of the Ummah lies in the righteousness of its actions, and the righteousness of its actions lies in the correctness of its knowledge, and the correctness of its knowledge lies in its men being honest in what they narrate or explain. So whosoever speaks about knowledge without honesty has inflicted a wound upon knowledge, and it is as if he has placed a rock to obstruct the path of the Ummah to success. No party affiliated to a particular subject is free from those who don't seek knowledge to beautify themselves with the highest virtue, nor to benefit the people, or you will discover that such people are dishonest. They have no shame in narrating what they did not hear, or in explaining what they do not know. This is what caused the great scholars criticize men, and to distinguish between those who exaggerate in their speech and those who speak according to what they know. It was this criticism that led the seekers of knowledge to become aware of the value of what they read, as well as its status, and become able to decisively distinguish truth from falsehood, or whatever whether that which they read was predominantly true or false or a mixture of both. Number 33. Truthfulness. Truthfulness in speech is a sign of awe, nobility of one's personality, purity in one's consciousness, high aspiration, and predominance of the mind, and a sign of acceptance from the people, the happiness of the community, and the protection of the faith. For this reason, it is an obligation upon everybody that, and what a disappointment for the one who neglects it, and whoever neglects it, that he has brought harm to himself and his knowledge. Al-Awza'i said, "Learn truthfulness before learning knowledge." And Waqi' said, "This profession, hadith, only raises the truthful one." So learn truthfulness before learning knowledge. May Allah shower you with His mercy. Truthfulness is speaking in accordance with reality and belief, so truth can only be attained through this way. As for its opposite, which is lying, then it is for many types, varieties, and realms, but it can be categorized into three. Number one, the lies of the groveler, who is the one that opposes both reality and belief, such as the one who grovels to a person whom he knows is sinful or an innovator. Number two, the lies of a hypocrite. He is the one who opposes his belief, but his speech is in accordance with reality, such as the hypocrite who speaks in accordance to Ahlus Sunnah and guidance. Number three, the lies of the foolish person are those which oppose reality and agree with belief, such as describing heretical Sufi as being friend of Allah. So strictly adhere to the path of truthfulness and do not move your tongue or form your lips and open your mouth and seek except to say a few words that express your true internal feelings, such as love and hate, or your external feelings, such as those which are perceived by the five senses: hearing, sight, smell, taste, and touch. So the truthful person would not say, "I love you for the sake of Allah," when he hates you, or "I heard when he did not hear," or so on. Beware that you do not become surrounded by suspicion and being recorded in the list of liars, which will then divert your determination to be truthful. The way to ensure against this: if you are contested by your desires to say something you are untruthful about, is to subdue any such desire by reminding it of the status of the truthfulness and its nobility, and the evil of lying and its lowliness, and that the liar is exposed very quickly, and seek refuge in Allah. Do not give yourself the excuse to speak in a manner which, to the listener, has an apparent meaning, but you, the speaker, intend something else in a manner other than the one prescribed by the Sharia. O seeker of knowledge, be careful not to transit through truthfulness into this type of speech, what will land you into lying. Indeed, the most evil result of this transition is lying in knowledge for the sake of sickness, of competing with your peers, and spreading your reputation. Whoever seeks out reputation higher than his status, then let him know that there are men on the lookout who possess a penetrative insight and critical pens, and they will weigh their reputation with the narrations, the ahadith, and sayings of the Salaf, and you will be stripped of three things: trust from the people's hearts, number two, knowledge, and there will be a decline in the acceptance in the hearts of people for you, number three, being disbelieved even when you are truthful. In general, whoever goes to extremes in speaking eloquently is the brother of the magician, and the magician will never be successful no matter what amount of skill he may attain, and Allah knows best. Number 34, the sanctuary of the seeker of knowledge. The sanctuary of the scholar is "I don't know," and he destroys this sanctuary by refusing to say it out of pride, and by answering it instead, "It was said such and such." Therefore, if half of knowledge is saying "I don't know," then half of ignorance is saying "it was said such and such," or "I think such and such. Number 35, preserving your capital, your lifetime. Preserve your time. Your time is in acquiring knowledge, so be a confederate of action and not a confederate of idleness and boastfulness, and a devotee to productivity and not to idle play and idle talk. Preserve your time through serious exertion, adherence to study, being in the company of scholars, and occupying yourself with knowledge by reading or being read to, researching, contemplating, and memorizing, especially during the prime of your youth and in the early years of your life, the source of your well being. So seize these precious opportunities, such as seeking knowledge in your youth, in or in order that you attain the highest levels of knowledge, for it is the time of the heart's composition and the assembly of thoughts, due to freedom from all that preoccupies and diverts your heart and mind through the responsibilities of life, due to the lack of dependence. What does the breadwinner want with the dependents? For it is only the single person strives to attain them. Beware of being overcome by procrastination. So do not procrastinate by saying to yourself, after I finish doing such and such, or I will do such and such after I retire from doing this task, and so forth. Rather, you should hasten to it immediately before the saying of Abu at-Tahan al-Qayni applies to you poetry. I was bent by the bending factors of time until I became as if I was a hunter drawing nearer to the prey, taking short steps that if anyone were to see me would think I am tied up when I am not. And it was said in poetry by Usama ibn Munqidh, and with the age of 80, weakness caused mischief in my body, and the weakness of my leg and the shivering of my hands upset me. And if I were to write, my handwriting would like that of a shaky person, like the writing of a shivering person with shivering hands. And you will become amazed at my hand, too weak to carry a pen, when it used to carry the spear to the lion's throat. So say to the one who wishes to live long, this is the outcome of a long life. So if you hasten, then this is a witness from yourself that you carry high aspiration in knowledge. Number 36, relaxing the body. Take a few hours from your time to relax yourself in the gardens of knowledge from the books of lectures, general knowledge, for the heart's need to be relaxed from time to time. It was narrated that the commander of the believers, Ali ibn Abi Talib, said, relax these hearts and seek them for the subtle wisdoms, for they become bored as just the bodies become bored. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah commented upon the wisdom concerning the prohibition of praying general supererogatory prayers during the abhorred times. Rather, in the prohibition of praying general supererogatory prayers during the abhorred times are additional advantage, such as relaxation of the body at intervals from the weightiness of worship, as one would relax by sleeping, and other forms of relaxation. And for this reason, Mu'adh said, verily, I seek reward for my sleep as I do when I am awake. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, also said, rather, it was said that from the general wisdoms of the prohibition of praying general supererogatory prayers during the abhorred times is the relaxation of the body during these abhorred times, so it may become more energetic at the times of obligatory prayer, for it becomes at ease by what it has been prohibited from, and becomes more energetic after it has been relaxed, and Allah knows best. For this purpose, weekend breaks were widespread from the early times, most commonly on Fridays and Thursday evenings, and sometimes used to be on Mondays and Tuesdays. And on Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, it would be up to 3 days, and so on. We find these in the books of the etiquette of teaching and the biographies. For example, Adab al-Mu'alimin, the etiquette of the teachers by Suhnun, and Al-Risalatul Mufusila, the articulate letter by Al-Qabisi, and Ash-Sha'iq an-Nu'maniyya Anemone, and from it Abjadul Ulum, simplified knowledge, and the book entitled Alaysa Subhu bi Qarib, is dawn not near, by Tahir bin Ashur, Fatawa Rashid Rida, and Mu'jam al-Budan, the dictionary of countries, and Fatawa Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. Number 37, precision and correct reading. Covet precision and correction reading to a proficient sheikh, so you may be safe from possible corruption and distortion, mistakes, and self-delusion. If you look up all the biographies of all the scholars, especially the Huffaz, those who memorize a very, very large proportion of the Sunnah, amongst them you will find a large number of them who have recited the entirety of the long compilations in a few gatherings or days. Reading with precision to a proficient sheikh, an example of such is Hafid ibn Hajar reads Sahih al-Bukhari in 10 gatherings, and in every gathering lasted 10 hours. Sahih Muslim in 4 gatherings in 2 days, and completed it at noon of the next day, which was the day of Arafah on Friday in the year 813 Hijrah. And he read the Sunan ibn Majah in 4 gatherings, and Mu'jam at-Tabarani as-Saghir in 1 sitting between Dhuhr and Asr. And the Shaykh al-Fayruzabadi read Sahih Muslim in Damascus to his Sheikh Ibn Jahbal with precision in 3 days. And there are many astonishing accounts of this type about Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, Al-Mu'tamin al-Saji, Ibn al-Abbar and others. If all of them were to be mentioned, it would take too long, and refer to them in the following books as mentioned, and do not forget your share of this. Number 38, summarizing long compilations through reading. Summarizing long compilations through reading is amongst the most important matters, and by doing it, you will multiply your knowledge, broaden your understanding, derive the unique benefits from its hiding places, and gain experience in knowing where different issues and topics can be found, and understand the different styles of the authors in their compilations and their terminologies within them. The predecessors, the scholars used to write at that point that they stopped reached, so he does not miss anything when he recommences his reading, especially after a long period of time. Number 39, excellence in asking questions. Adhere to the etiquette of collective studies, such as the excellence in asking questions, listening, and correct understanding of the answer. Beware when you receive an answer to say, but Sheikh so and such to me, for this is a deficiency in your manners and it creates a conflict between the sayings of the scholars. If you must do so, then clarify your question and say, what is your opinion of such and such fatwa, without naming the person. Ibn al-Qayyim said, it was said, if you sit with a scholar, then ask to gain religious understanding and not to go to extremes. He also said there are 6 levels of knowledge. The first is excellence in asking questions. The second is excellence in paying attention and listening. The third is excellence in understanding. The fourth is memorizing. The fifth is teaching. The sixth, and this is the fruit of knowledge, is implementing it and appreciating its boundaries. He then proceeded to clarify this further in some important research. Number 40. Debating with argumentation. Beware of dispute, for it is an unfavorable affair. As for debating for the truth, then it is a favorable affair, because in true debate, the truth is uplifted over falsehood, and correctness over incorrectness. It is built upon sincere advice to one another, forbearance, and spreading knowledge. As for dispute in conversations and debates, then it is argumentation, showing off, disturbance, pride, a struggle to become the victorious contestant, a quarrel, deceit, enmity, and is in accordance with the foolish people. So beware of it, and the one who indulges in it, and you will be safe from sins and falling into that which is unlawful. So turn away, and you will be safe and quell the liabilities of sin. Number 41, revision of knowledge in groups. Attain pleasure by revision and presentation of the problems to be researched with the people who have an insight into knowledge, because it excels reading in the same as in some aspects, and it sharpens the mind and strengthens the memory. At the same time, you should adhere to being fair, kind, and distance yourself from unfairness, disturbance, and rashness. Be alert, for it exposes the defects of the untruthful person. If it, revision, was the person short of knowledge, dull in mind, then it becomes harmful and leads to mutual repulsion. As for private revision by browsing through the issues of knowledge, then this is an affair that you should not become detached from. It was said the revival of knowledge is revision. Number 42. The seeker of knowledge lives between the text of the Quran and Sunnah and its knowledge associated to them. For they are for him as 2 wings are to the bird, so be careful that you don't become broken winged. Number 43, completion of learning the tools of every subject. You will never become a true seeker of knowledge, one who is precise and diverse, unless you complete learning the tools of every subject. For example, in fiqh, jurisprudence, combine between jurisprudence and its principles, and in hadith, combine between understanding it and the knowledge of the principles of narration, and so on. And if you cannot or will not do this, then do not trouble yourself at all. Allah said, الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يتلونه حق تلاوته أولئك يؤمنون به. And those who embraced Islam from Bani Israel, or the companions to whom we gave the book, the Torah or the Quran, recite it and obey its orders and its teachings, as it should be recited, are those who believe therein. We can understand from this verse that the seeker of knowledge should not leave a subject after perfecting it.